From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! We're broadcasting from the Sundance Film Festival in Park City, Utah.
This is another example of the Democrats are essentially a bunch of wimps. They don't have the guts. They don't have the courage of their own convictions. They're disgusting. I'm embarrassed. I want really nothing to do with them. And if they don't find their spine, well, they're in for a huge surprise in November.
Filmmaker Michael Moore on the Democrats' Haiti, hope, and his role in the Supreme Court decision that opened the floodgates to corporate money in politics. And in a national broadcast exclusive, we speak with prominent Haitian New Yorker and community activist Jean Montreville. He's just been released from jail in New York after being held for 3 weeks by immigration authorities. His scheduled deportation was indefinitely put off after the earthquake in Haiti. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The World Food Program says the crisis in Haiti after the earthquake may be the most complex operation the agency has ever faced. The United Nations estimates 2 million Haitians need immediate food aid. So far, distribution of food aid has been limited. As of Saturday, the World Food Program had reached about 200,000 in Port-au-Prince, they claim, and 113,000 in other areas, less than a sixth of the people that need food. Haitians living in tent cities in Port-au-Prince say they've nothing to eat.
I've been at the Camp de Mars since January 12th, and I don't know what's going on or what's going to happen to us. I don't know where to go. We're sleeping in the streets, and I'm telling all who want to help that we are waiting for your help. We have nothing to eat and nothing to drink.
At a meeting in Montreal, international leaders agreed Monday on a 10-year plan to rebuild Haiti. Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper chaired the talks.
It is not an exaggeration to say that 10 years of hard work at least awaits the world in Haiti. 2, we need to focus on effectiveness. The Haitian people deserve it, and our own taxpayers expect it. 3, we must hold ourselves and each other accountable for the commitments that we make. I'd like to see emerge from this meeting the beginnings of a plan that will guide reconstruction in Haiti in a way that is effective, coordinated, and strategic for the decade to come.
Speaking in Montreal, Haiti's Prime Minister, Jean-Max Berive, said Haiti's government could lead efforts to rebuild the country.
I can simply tell you that the people of Haiti are in need of more, and more to complete the sole task of reconstruction.
Secretary of State Hillary Clinton attended the Montreal talks but declined to say how much the United States would provide in the long term. While foreign ministers met in Montreal, the situation on the ground in Haiti remains dire. Haiti's Minister of Health, Alex Larson, says the medical community is struggling to deal with the high number of amputations needed to be performed on survivors of the quake.
And what is particularly sad is the children. There are many children whose members were totally crushed, putrefied, and that we had to amputate. There is this 5-year-old who had to be amputated from the knee down. When you look at this child, you tell yourself he won't have the same youth that I have had, that you have had.
At his State of the Union address on Wednesday, President Obama is expected to call for a 3-year freeze on non-security federal discretionary spending. The Pentagon will be exempted from the freeze, as will the Department of Homeland Security and Veterans Affairs. The freeze would cover many domestic areas, including education and the environment. Officials say the proposal will save $15 billion off next year's budget. On Capitol Hill, Democratic lawmakers are crafting legislation to limit the role corporations can play in elections, following last week's Supreme Court ruling that corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money to elect and defeat candidates. Congressmember Chris Van Hollen of Maryland said one piece of legislation being considered will prohibit foreign-owned corporations from funneling money into American political campaigns. The court's ruling made no distinction between domestic and foreign corporations. Van Hollen said, quote, "We have been very clear that we think it's totally inappropriate for foreign contributions to be influencing the outcome of American elections." ABC News reports White House lawyers are debating whether the U.S. can legally assassinate a U.S. citizen in Yemen. Anwar al-Awlaki is a U.S.-born cleric who's been accused of having ties to the failed Christmas Day airline bombing and the shooting at Fort Hood. ABC reports U.S. officials fear the possibility of criminal prosecution without approval in advance from the White House for a targeted strike against Awlaki. Awlaki has not been charged with any crimes under U.S. law. In Iraq, nearly 60 people have died in Baghdad over the past 24 hours in a pair of bombings. Earlier today, a suicide bomber killed at least 18 in a strike against the Interior Ministry offices. The majority of those killed were Iraqi police officers. On Monday, 41 people died in a series of blasts at 3 Baghdad hotels, which are popular with Western journalists and foreign security contractors. The Hamra Hotel housed the Washington Post bureau in Baghdad. 3 of the paper's Iraqi employees were wounded in the blast. Major General Stephen Lanza, a spokesperson for U.S. forces in Baghdad, blamed the bombings on al-Qaeda.
We believe that these will continue to some degree in the future, but they certainly won't stop the overall security that has been achieved in this country and then moving us towards the national elections on 7 March.
In other news from Iraq, another top official from Saddam Hussein's government has been executed. Ali Hassan al-Majid was hanged on Monday after receiving 4 death sentences. The man, nicknamed Chemical Ali, was accused of overseeing the gassing of 5,000 people in the Kurdish village of Halabja in 1988. In news from Europe, Greek farmers are staging a series of protests to express anger over high production costs and low prices. Farmers have been staging roadblocks around the country, obstructing border crossings and highways with their tractors. Marudas Rizos is a representative of the Larissa Farmers Collective.
We are waging a battle to survive. Farmers are dying out. Thousands of farmers from homes are out on the streets. This battle is to keep our land, our villages alive, and we want to be able to produce and be able to offer to the people affordable quality products.
The Israeli news agency Ynet is reporting the Israeli government is preparing an all-out attack on Richard Goldstone's United Nations report that accused Israel of committing war crimes during its assault on Gaza. Israeli cabinet minister Yuli Edelstein said, quote, "The Goldstone report and similar reports are simply a type of anti-Semitism." Ynet reports Israel will launch the attack on the Goldstone report tomorrow, the 65th anniversary of the 1945 liberation of Auschwitz. Last year, the United Nations called on Israel to conduct an independent, credible investigation into the war crimes allegations, but Israel has refused to establish a commission of inquiry. The military contractor Halliburton has petitioned the Supreme Court to overturn a lower court ruling in an attempt to block a former Halliburton employee's lawsuit alleging she was raped by her co-workers in Iraq. Jamie Lee Jones sued Halliburton and its former subsidiary, KBR, over claims she was drugged and gang raped by co-workers in Baghdad. Jones also accused the company of keeping her in a shipping container without food or water for at least 24 hours after the alleged crime took place. Halliburton says the contract signed by Jones and other workers requires claims to be settled through arbitration, not trial. And in Albany, New York, competing rallies were held Monday over plans to allow for natural gas drilling in the Marcellus Shale in upstate New York. Supporters of the drilling say it'll create jobs, but critics say the drilling process known as hydraulic fracturing or fracking could contaminate the water supplies of New York City and other areas of the state. New York State Senator Tom Duane spoke out against the gas drilling.
I have opposed all fracking in New York State. It is way too dangerous. I have also introduced with Assemblymember Brennan legislation that would ban it near anyone's drinking water.
Those are some of the headlines. This is